Welcome to Rising Together, a weekly inspirational podcast designed and dedicated to honor stories of human resilience, creativity, and healing. I'm your host, Meg Collier. Thanks for joining me here. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Rising Together. My name is Meg. I'm your host here, Light Summoner, coach on a mission to help you shine brighter. And today we're going to dive into one of my most favorite and often challenging topics to discuss with people because it's something, number one, that we all experience. It's something that if we don't know that we're experiencing it, we might not know how to handle it. We also need permission sometimes to do this. And this thing that I am alluding to is called holding both. And so today I want to talk to you about what it means to hold both, what it means to live in the tension of opposites. And I want to start by reading you a quote by Sophia Bush. And the quote goes, "You can be both a masterpiece and a work in progress." So a couple months ago, I stood in two states at the same time. I was with my friend Penny, and we walked from Pennsylvania over to New Jersey across a footbridge. And I have a picture of me standing in two states at the same time, which was, even though I've crossed many states, this was the first time that I had done this. And it really got me thinking about this huge lesson that I learned over the past 5 years, and mostly in that week. And what that lesson was really about was this idea of navigating the tension of opposites, of holding two very different emotions and experiencing them at the same time. So when trauma and grief and difficult emotions of the like show up in our awareness, it can often feel like we need to choose which feelings we want to feel. And you get this very kind of black or white picture, either this or that, never both. So it can feel awkward to feel both happy and sad at the same time. Like, is that even possible? You'll often hear people maybe say or refer to like, am I crazy? Is there something wrong with me? You can even feel scared and excited at the same breath, right? Like resentful and compassionate can coexist. Stick with me here. Language and conditioning seems to fail us on the idea of holding the tension of opposite emotions at the same time. This, for me, has been especially present for me when I'm navigating like really big transitions, like when I launched this coaching practice, or when I left corporate America, or when I decided to release myself from a relationship or my marriage. Learning to hold both can help us expand our awareness while simultaneously growing our spirit. Like, it's here where we trade in heaping doses of fear for the softening, tender nature of self-love. So holding both can look like this. Let me lay some examples on you so you have some ideas. Holding both can look like very loyal to my career, my job, my company. And at the same time, I know that if I'm sick, if I'm having panic attacks on the way to work, if I'm not sleeping on Sunday nights, that this job might not be for me. It might not be a good fit for me. And I can still be very loyal to my job and company. Another example, you can say to somebody, the way you spoke to me hurt my feelings. And at the same time, I can also believe that I take personal responsibility for the way I showed up and triggered your anger, right? Like, I can still have my feelings hurt and still take personal responsibility for how I showed up in that engagement. Another one is like when you're ready to take a big leap and do something new, right? Like, this new leap scares the living shit out of me. And also my resilience and tenacity is unparalleled, that I'm willing to endure the sacrifices of what I need to let go in order to meet this new challenge, right? With every risk, there is this inherent sacrifice because you know what you're landing on or what you're aiming for is greater than what you're giving up. Right? That's the definition of risk. And it can still scare the living shit out of you. and you can still be resilient and tenacious and endure those sacrifices. Another one, more relationship example. I'm committed to my partner and I love them unconditionally. And at the same time, I love myself unconditionally and understand that if I'm being manipulated or if I'm undergoing pain in the relationship, it will not work for me and I need to move on. Like, whoa, holy hell, boundaries on that one, because I know so many people that have been in this scenario, both, all genders, it doesn't matter. It's not always, what we would think of a domestic situation. If you are committed to somebody and you love them unconditionally, and at the same time, they are showing up and you're being manipulated, you're witnessing it, people are bringing it to your attention, and you're in ongoing pain, you're walking on eggshells. Once you surrender to the fact that it will not work and you need to move on, you can find a way to hold both, right? And this, my friends, is the real nature of the tension of opposites. And I absolutely don't think there is enough conversation around this. I think that we live in, especially here in America, we live in a culture that is very much good or bad, black or white, in or out, successful or not successful. It looks like this or it doesn't look like this. And I think this black and white thing of thinking that, the way we measure ourselves and the way we feel measured or judged is actually doing us, creatively and developmentally a huge disservice. It's doing us a huge disservice because it doesn't allow for us to experience a full range of human emotions. It doesn't allow for us to say, I'm both happy and sad at the same time without having some type of label come to that. And, I really want to take a sidebar, a little pause here to talk about that and to talk about mental health. And, I know I've come up against it where I've been in working with a professional in therapy and I've said, do I have this disorder or, am I this? Because I will have literally just two competing emotions showing up for me. And I think that the awareness around mental health is so important because it will keep people from just like diagnosing themselves or dismissing themselves. Like, it really grinds my gears when people pick on people that are just like, they're not even picking on people, but they're like, I just have ADHD. And there are actually people out there that struggle with that. And I think that when you understand that you can feel a myriad of different ways, sometimes in a molecule of a moment, you garner a greater understanding that you are just a human being experiencing a full range of human emotions. Now, if those emotions, if those experiences start to get out of your control, out of your ability to wind them back in or manage them, that's when it does call for some extra support systems from professionals, from friends, from families, from therapists, whatever you need to do to seek your highest level of care for your, mental well-being, your physical well-being, and your spiritual well-being is so fucking important. But let us not be dismissive or kind of use this broad umbrella term of crazy as something to define us just having a full range of human emotions. My rant is over now. But really, in each of these scenarios that I've presented to you, what we do is we choose both and type of thinking over either or thinking. So I am both a masterpiece and a work in progress, like the quote we said earlier. I am both committed and loving, but also I have really strong boundaries. Both can exist. And so we decide that to build an understanding for developing a higher tolerance for uncertainty can really be a driving force to our deepest healing. And it can really help us transcend our biggest blocks. But we have to show up to that work, right? We have to dig deep. We have to find the space We need to find the support. We need to find the light that can navigate us in that type of rising, right? Because if you've lived in a world, if you've been told forever that, you just have to be that or this, or why don't you just be happy? Or, oh my God, the worst thing you can say to someone with anxiety, like, why don't you just not be nervous? I know anybody with anxiety who's heard that before, like literally makes my skin crawl. We decide that we can see calm despite the chaos in our world, but we must go first inside. And that the work that we are working on, the work that we are working through, the deep inner work is the work that helps us and frees us to show up in bigger, bolder, more impactful ways in the world. Right? What I found after leaving my hometown, traveling all over, seeking something, was that what I was seeking was also seeking me, and it was right inside of me the entire time. We think we can run away from things, or that we can escape them, or that we can numb them out. And really what we're only doing in those times is delaying our own healing. And so by diving into the deep waters of getting curious about what's happening in our mindset, right? Of deciding to write empowering new storylines about who we are and how we want to show up in the world, we also decide that both can exist. We also decide to offer ourselves more grace and more ease in our lives as we begin to navigate holding both, and learn that this tension is not something that is going to break us. Instead, the tension and learning to walk that tight wire is something that will expand us. And so if you have been in a space where you feel a lot of different ways, I want to ask you to give yourself permission to simply be where you are. Okay? And secondarily, I want you to write a letter of forgiveness to yourself. Dear self, I forgive you for this. I forgive you for that. It's okay to be here. I'm sorry that that happened. When you start giving yourself that love, that forgiveness, you really cultivate self-acceptance. And, I'll talk about it over and over again here, the ubiquitous work, the invisible work. When you do it, it closes these chapters that no longer need to be open in your life, right? It finishes the loop so that you can move on. Relieving yourself of indecision is one of the greatest gifts you can do. Is like one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. So if you're not sure how to feel because you feel a million different ways, how about it's just okay to feel a million different ways? It's okay to give yourself permission to be exactly where you are. And the medicine that comes up, the animal medicine that comes up for me as we talk about this, about holding both, is the animal medicine of deer, which is all about gentleness. It's all about, going intentionally, the gentle, nurturing love that we get from maybe mother figures in our life, or from people that have raised us. That same love is accessible for you to give to yourself. And when you tap into deer medicine, you're tapping into this gentleness, to this softness. And we can always feel judged. There's you can go a million different places and feel judged. And you can also go inside your own head and feel judged by yourself. So when you enact deer medicine, you're really giving yourself a little dose of gentleness. And isn't that what we need when we've been so hard on ourselves for being confused about how we feel overall? And so if you found yourself on the path, at any time, really feeling like you're in between these two opposite emotions, happy and sad, resentful and empathetic, love or hate. We've been there too. I want to encourage you to know and to embrace that both can exist. And you can too make your own both and statements that will help you rise to the occasion to tell yourself that it is okay to be exactly where you are. You are enough. You are perfect. You are loved. And, with this hand over heart, may we all be loved. May we all be safe. And may we all be at ease. So, my friends, that's what we have for you this week. If you are enjoying what we're putting out here at Rising Together, please, please, please subscribe. Share this episode with a friend. It just takes a second to text it over. And above all else, be good to yourself and be kind to one another and continue to unleash your greatness into the world. And I'll see you back here next week. Thank you so much for listening to Rising Together. This podcast was edited by Sharon Rudiman of Wild Women Healers. The podcast is hosted by me, Meg Collier. You can get today's show notes at togetherinrising.com/podcast. To support Rising Together, consider subscribing and reviewing the podcast or becoming a monthly supportive member. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to yours for being here as we document the journey of rising from the ashes.